let's talk about Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is 650, Kate, plus 650 at BetMGM for Offensive Player of the Year. He's won it before. He's third in that market, right behind CMC, Christian McCaffrey, and Tyreek Hill. For Justin Jefferson to not only put up the kind of numbers, but I think for the Vikings, I can't see Justin Jefferson, as big a year as he might have, winning Offensive Player of the Year if the Vikings go 4-13, right? I have a hard. It would have to be such a statistically greater year than anything one of the other guys at the top of this board, Chase, Lamb, Hill, McCaffrey, have on a winning team, that I think it kind of puts him behind a little bit of an 8-ball regarding Offensive Player of the Year.
You have to put him where he's at because of what he's capable of doing, right?
Right.
But is he capable of doing that with this quarterback situation? Absolutely not. With this roster, against this schedule, absolutely not. You look who, Christian McCaffrey at the top, what he did last year, that's repeatable this year because of the roster that they have. Tyreek Hill, similar thing. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow's going to be back throwing him the ball. I mean, I would price Jefferson closer to 10-1, right? 15-1, something like that, because Darnold's going to be throwing you the ball for the first 5 weeks. I mean, as a starter, what's Darnold? Darnold is 21-35 as a starter. That doesn't make me feel very confident that he's going to have a ton of success and that, the connection's going to be there. So I would not put anything down on Justin Jefferson to win Offensive Player of the Year. Charge told us he averaged 135 yards per game last year. That's not happening again. You had Kirk Cousins throwing you the ball, one of the best pure passing quarterbacks in the league. I just don't see any avenue or any path to where Jefferson is able to accumulate enough yards, enough touchdowns. Sure, the Vikings are likely going to be playing from behind a lot in some of these games. I still don't think that translates to enough for Jefferson to win this award.
I also think, as this offense progresses throughout the season, whether they actually turn to McCarthy at some point or not, there's going to be a progression where we see continued growth from Jordan Addison, right? Addison's going to continue to see more targets, I think, as well. And so, I like Justin Jefferson a ton. I don't like him at plus 650 for Offensive Player of the Year. There's a 7-1 to lead the league in receiving yards. There's a 10-1 to lead the league in receiving touchdowns. I don't really like any of those. Now, if we talk about his individual player props for yardage and touchdowns, okay, I can start to get on board. At BetMGM, he's listed at 1,300 and a hook for receiving yards. Touchdowns, 7.5. I could see him going over both of those numbers. I don't know if I'm betting it yet, but I could see him going over both of those numbers. Interestingly enough, there's no yardage total that I've seen, at least at BetMGM, listed for Jordan Addison, but he is listed at 6.5 touchdowns, which tells you this is going to be closer, not a total even 50-50 split, but a closer split certainly than it was last year between Jefferson and Addison. How long is the leash for Darnold before they finally break glass in the case of emergency and go to McCarthy and open up what is, he's on the board 5th for Offensive Rookie of the Year that I see at BetMGM at 17-1 behind only Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, that's not a bet you want to take. Do not touch that bet. They're really behind Darnold, and nothing that they saw in the offseason workouts have changed this. From the moment they drafted McCarthy, they said long leash. The overriding perception here in Minnesota is it's going to have to be disastrous for Sam Darnold before they would go to McCarthy. And even then, there might be a scenario where they wouldn't go to McCarthy. They might go to Nick Mullins, throw Nick Mullins back in. They are really committed to the long leash on JJ McCarthy. So you don't want to do any kind of bets that involve McCarthy getting a lot of playing time. It'll take injury or Sam Darnold being extremely bad. And Chris, you touched on the win total a little bit in passing and the schedule. So let's talk about the over under 6.5 wins. Yeah. Currently, as you know, you can already bet all 17 games for every team in the NFL right now. Do you know how many games the Vikings are favored in across the 17 game schedule?
Can't be more than 3 or 4, right?
0.
Oof.
You've got in the division, right? So you got Detroit on a Super Bowl course. I think they win the Super Bowl. Green Bay surging. Chicago looks dramatically better. Minnesota could lose every divisional game. And then they've got all these playoff caliber teams that are on the schedule outside of the division. San Francisco, Houston, the Rams. I think the Colts are going to be really feisty. Jacksonville, Atlanta, Seattle. It's just the schedules is real looks on paper, here in late June to be very, very difficult. I'm solidly under the 6.5 win total.
So confidence level to compete in this division, not very high. I mean, hearing you say that
No,
they might lose every division game, which when you look at the schedule and where they play and when they played their division opponents, I'm with you. I find it hard to believe that they can win any division games, but like in terms of betting them at all in the division, like complete stay away.
no way. Not touching it. Even I think they're roughly like plus 700 to win the division. I think those odds are not correct here. They should be closer to plus 1,000. And it would have to be. You have to go back to the Sam Darnold play. Really, Sam Darnold. I'd rather bet Sam Darnold as comeback player of the year at plus 8,000 than the Vikings at plus 750 because it really would ride on Sam Darnold having an amazing year, and I can get way more value on Sam Darnold at plus 8,000 if you think that there's some scenario where the Vikings end up breaking through and being competitive to win the division.
And they open up in New York against the Giants, but then come home to face the Niners and the Texans. They'll go to Green Bay, and then also, as you mentioned, London against the Jets in Week 5 before they get to the bye. It doesn't get any easier coming out of the bye, though, Kate. Like Detroit at home, at the Rams, then they get a visit from the Colts, and then 3 in a row on the road in November. Jacksonville, Tennessee, okay, that Tennessee's not going to be great this year either. And then at the Bears. Then home games against Arizona and Atlanta. I think that's the opportunity before they host Chicago as well. So 3 road games in November, 3 home games in December, leading up to a Christmas weekend trip to Seattle. I do think there's some opportunity there when we look at, say, weeks 9 all the way down through 16, because Indy, we don't know what Anthony Richardson's going to be. Let's be honest. Anthony Richardson is going to be singularly great in some instances and just singularly bad in other instances. It's going to be wild extremes, I think, continue for him, as talented as he is. The trip to Jacksonville, that's an interesting one, but I think winnable depending on how the Jaguars are playing at that point in time. Certainly a winnable game in Tennessee. And as high as some people are on the Bears, and you're right, Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, they've definitely made the additions necessary, and we know how good the defense can be. Like, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility, in my mind anyway, that they split with the Bears. The Caleb Williams has some moments, especially against a pressure defense like the Vikings, where he struggles. So as I try to find the other side of the argument and the other side of the coin for no, Minnesota could win some of these games that we look at out of the gate as L's, there's, I think, a win in Tennessee. There's a possible win in one of the 2 against Chicago. There's a win against Indy or Jacksonville, I think, in there. I think against Seattle, there's definitely an opportunity for a win, even on the road, given that we're not exactly talking about a great quarterback situation there either, depending on how Geno plays. Arizona is a possible win, and we talked about the Giants at the beginning of the year. That you can build it to 6 wins, I guess, without too much of a struggle if you believe that other teams are going to have their issues as well. It's just with 6.5 being the number, it is hard to get over.
Yeah, the game against the Rams, you're going to LA, you're on a short week. That's coming off of a game against Detroit. So on my list here, Chris, I have the Colts week 9 as a potential win, Jacksonville potential win, Tennessee potential win, sure. And then weeks 13 through 18. So maybe I have to backtrack on the take the Vikings to go winless in the division on 10-1, because Detroit the last week, yes, you're at Detroit, but if we think Detroit is going to be a Super Bowl caliber team, are they going to play their starters? Now, Dan Campbell is the coach to, if there's anyone, to go, balls to the wall and play his starters week 18, right? But you have weeks 13 through 18. Those are all indoors with the exception of Seattle. And that time of year in Seattle, like, it's not the East Coast. So maybe there is potential for a win here or there. Arizona, I mean, you're at home. Atlanta with Kirk coming back. What's that team like? I think with these weeks 9 through 18, it's going to come down to health for both teams, regardless. And then how good, if JJ McCarthy is in by that point, I think he's going to be. Like, how good are the rookies for Minnesota going to be playing at that point?
Aaron Jones at 750.5 for rushing yards and 4.5 touchdowns. Those are numbers I like. Having known what he's capable of, if they lean into him, and again, I would imagine they're going to lean into him pretty heavily with Ty Chandler as the backup. I mean, it's going to be Aaron Jones RB1, Aaron Jones third down back, Aaron Jones on the field all the time. Those seem like very doable numbers, 750.5, even if he does a ton of his damage catching the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah, he's their primary back. Ty Chandler, he got a lot of reps towards the end of the season last year, but what did he really do? Not a whole lot. Like, Madison was the guy that they went to. So, plus 3 of his last 5 years, Jones has gone over 1,000 yards rushing. Only played in 11 games last year. Like, injuries cost him quite a bit, but still, 650 yards last year. Like, I think that's something that's doable, is Aaron Jones to go over those rushing yards, because they're really high on him coming in here too. So they're excited about that. You'd think that they want to have that balance more so with the quarterback situation, where, like, with Kirk, he was throwing the ball every snap. Like, they didn't have to have a massive run game to open things up.
Yeah.
This year they will.